It's so wonderful to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation with Dana, and certainly saw so many familiar faces in the crowd here. Our focus, as the moderator or host just said, we're going to be talking about legacy brands crafting timeless narratives, and what better example to explore than NBA 2K. But I think before we even dive into that and NBA 2K, who's a fan of the NBA? Show of fans. All right. Who's a fan of NBA 2K? Even more fans. Awesome.
Who's a fan of the Knicks? Yeah.
I was going to say, who was nervous last night for the Knicks? Who was at the game? I know I just talked to someone that was at the game. All right. Awesome. So with that being said, we're going to kick it off. I'm going to kick it over to Dana here, my new friend from NBA 2K. Dana, how did you find your way to 2K?
It was an interesting journey. I actually started my career in fashion, and then I made my way to sports about 10 years ago, and from sports apparel into tech and gaming. So it was an unexpected shift for me, but one that's been really rewarding.
Was there something in fashion that kicked off your inspiration to moving towards gaming specifically?
No, not at all. I would not consider myself a gamer. I am a sports fanatic and I'm an athlete at heart. So fashion was cool. I liked the experience, but then really moving into, something that was more authentic to me and what keeps me passionate every day. So, I really look at my role at 2K as, we work in gaming, but it's really an extension of the leagues that we get to work with and the athletes we get to work with, and more on the sports side than the true gaming side.
As I was saying earlier today, it's interesting. You think about the Met Gala on Monday, Amber Reese leaving postseason or preseason warm up to attend. You think about Caitlin Clark being dressed in Prada. We're at this new place, and personality and the moment where creators have become their own brands in a variety of different ways. So it's interesting when you talk about your background being in fashion, now evolving to gaming. There's a lot of synergies and parallels there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the men have had the spotlight for so long as it relates to fashion and all of that. And just to see the trajectory of women in sport right now, specifically with basketball, is pretty freaking incredible. And we love to see it on our side. I love to see it as a fan, as a consumer of all of these things. But I think just to see these young ladies get their due, long time coming, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. So pivoting a little bit from fashion and sports, as NBA 2K turned 25 last year, what strategies do you employ to maintain its status as a legacy brand? And how are you continuing to evolve the brand for the next 25 years?
Yeah, it was an exciting milestone. 25 years of anything is pretty incredible, right? And to see the way the game has evolved over 25 years and integrations with key partners and athletes. I think first and foremost, we are an extension of the leagues and the athletes and the teams we work with, right? And so that's really how we look at ourselves. And so it's staying at the forefront of really that intersection with sport and culture. So that is, anything from what's going on as the leagues continue to evolve, from NBA Cup to, in-season tournaments to things like that. And then our athletes, for example, for 2K23, when we had Devin Booker on our cover, in order to keep that as a really fresh experience, he was part of the development of so many pieces of our in-game execution. So from certain modes within the game, as well as just the cover shoot. It was the first time we've ever shot an athlete for our cover. And then we're able to use all of that background footage as additional content extensions for us specifically. So just really staying at the forefront of what the athletes want, what the leagues want, is something that we use as kind of our guiding light.
How much creative control are you giving those athletes as opposed to
that's a fun one. Listen, everyone, they're looking at it as, it's so incredible to see how much being on the cover of 2K means to these athletes. And it surprises me every year to see the reaction when it's like, you've been selected, or they see their cover for the first time. Like seeing grown men cry is over something like that. I'm like, this is so crazy. Like, just like the importance of it. It kind of makes me take a step back and realize how significant of a milestone it is for them as they grow their career. I think, creative control is a tough thing. We have a lot of key stakeholders within our brand. We are NBA 2K, but we are, the NBA has a lot of creative control, as does the PA and the athletes itself. So it's balancing all of those things and making sure everyone feels good about it.
Yeah, for sure. So the fans you have, as we just spoke to, are very loyal to the franchise. How do you engage, retain, and continue to grow new audiences?
Yeah, our community is paramount to us, right? So like, yes, it can be sometimes a very toxic community, but at the same time, there's a lot of feedback that they provide us that helps us get better, not only from how the game actually plays and what the game actually looks like year over year, but just how we market and bring our product to life year after year. So we do things like community day. So before the game launches in the fall, we'll bring our core creators from around the world to a joint space and give them early access to our game. And from there, we get feedback. And we're capturing content as to what as to what things that are really exciting them for the next iteration of the game. It's hard. It's an annual game, and that's really hard to keep fresh and keep new. So it's about how we're taking some of those things that only NBA 2K can offer and bringing it to the community.
Our whole business is predicated on creators. Can you expand a little bit more on the creators and how you choose those creators when you develop these offsites?
Yeah, I think there's this ongoing conversation we're having internally right now between influencers and content creators. Those are not the same thing. And I think
that's right.
there's a stipulation that they are, and that's just not true, right? Like there's paid influencers that most likely everyone in this room has worked with at some point in their life, and you're paying them to endorse your brand. Content creators for gaming are the most core audience you could possibly talk to and work with for that respective product. So we have a group of core content creators that our community team manages, and they're selected at a global level based on their engagement with our game, how they, their accessibility, and how much they're willing to share with us. And that's an unpaid iteration versus our paid influencers. Both are very important, but they serve very different purposes, and they're talking to very different audiences.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. How would you say NBA 2K approaches storytelling across different platforms and media channels to maximize engagement and resonance?
Yeah, that is, we are an insights-driven organization. So we start with the insights and learnings from the year previous, and then we do a ton of research and identifying ways in which things that failed, things that worked, and how we're moving forward, staying at the forefront of what's happening with sport as well as culture as well as media channels. It's an ongoing battle that we all face as marketers. I shouldn't say it's a battle. It's an ongoing opportunity for all the things that we face. And so it's just staying and like, what is the right media channel to be on for the right audience that we're trying to target with X initiative. So that's kind of how we approach it.
Would you say there are specific channels that resonate better than others, or are there ones that you are leaning into topically, or new opportunities that you're thinking about currently?
Yeah, it depends on our goals. So we're having right now kind of a reset as to how we're approaching 25 and beyond, and really speaking to our core audience. So that core gamer, that core fan that has an affinity for not only sport, but also our game. And so how we're speaking to them is going to feel a little bit different than things we've done in the past. We've done like really hard into music, which we'll still do, but you'll see a little bit more of a messaging around like the game itself and how it feels to win and the competition that exists within 2K, because we know that's really what motivates our core community, is like that competition, whether it's amongst your friends or whether it's with someone you've never met before that you're playing with online. There's really something there that we can dig into.
Yeah, for sure. How does NBA 2K approach marketing when the NBA is in season versus when it's not in season?
We are a 12-month, 365-day product. So right now, for example, we are in 2K24, the kind of the end of our product life cycle, but obviously it's peak for NBA playoffs, and then the W is kicking off next week. So we kind of have the luxury of luxury or not a luxury, it depends on how you look at it. We're never really off, good, bad, and different. There's always something we can talk about, whether it's, we have seasons within the game. So we have 9 seasons in the game. So we will release ongoing seasons leading up to the next iteration of the product, which allows us to talk not only about what's going on in the leagues themselves, but also just new products new modes within the game that we can continue to talk about for kind of this, like, as the life cycle of the game starts to tail off and we ramp up our spends for the next iteration.
How does 2K think about success other than sales, and how do you iterate on that success? If something's not successful, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so obviously sales are important to all of us, right? Like sales pay our bills. But for us, it's really about brand affinity, our player engagement, our player sentiment. Those things, we look at all the time to see, and I'm not just talking like what the community is saying, whether it's on media or whatever. I'm essentially how our messages are being received by the general audience. And for us specifically, it's balancing sales, and there's so many different ways to measure sales from a game standpoint, but then also just overall audience engagement and their brand sentiment around NBA 2K.
WNBA, everyone seems to be talking about it today, and certainly a lot of events that I've been to recently, is currently at the center of the global conversation. NBA 2K23 featured Sue Bird on the cover to honor her legacy. How do you lead this culture, and what's the relationship between leading and following this cultural conversation? As we know, personality is driving this fandom.
Yeah, love talking about the WNBA, and for all of those in here that are at the league. Hi, guys. So it wasn't just Sue Bird. We started with Candace Parker back in 2021, and then or 2022 rather. That was the first time we've ever put a female on the cover, and it was incredible. Obviously, Candace just retired, so that was an incredible way to kick off putting females on the cover. And then we went into a joint cover with Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi. Obviously, they have their legacy from UConn. They have their legacy from UConn, and then continuing telling that message. When we had initially put them on the cover, we had thought Taurasi was going to retire as well. Obviously, she didn't, but it was really fun for us to just play off of their relationship and be able to, honor Sue as she did retire. And then most recently, we have Sabrina on 2K24, and that was exciting because it was a launch of her signature shoe as well as her relationship with Kobe, who was our male athlete. So for us, it's continuing to keep really fresh storylines with our selection of who we're putting on the female cover. There's a lot of work to be done. I would be lying to all of you if I said we were leading this conversation. We're not at all leading. I personally feel like we have a ton of opportunity with the W and with the female athletes, and how we can continue to evolve how we're bringing equity to female in basketball.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Hello.
Oh, you died here. Try this on.
All right. Are we back on? I think my microphone.
You want to?
Hello. I think we lost the microphone, or both of them. Moving on here too. So how does the rise of individual players as brands inform marketing NBA 2K? Specifically, how does NBA 2K work to amplify and make connections to the sport and individual players for fans? I think there's a microphone out in the back, out in the front lobby. Out in the front. I'm gonna repeat this. How does the rise of individual players as brands inform marketing NBA 2K? Specifically, how does NBA 2K work to amplify and make connections to the sport, individual players for fans?
It's a fun one for us to see, honestly. I think, obviously we can't support each and every respective player's personal brands and products within our game and our marketing. That said, when we sign a series of athletes to our roster every year. And so we really tried, when we're signing those athletes and selecting who those athletes are for each year, what do they have going on? Like, what is the trajectory of the team? What is their, what market are they playing in? What's their global residence? What outside of basketball, how do they represent our 2K values and the league values? And so once we've aligned on that, and then we see, maybe they're launching a clothing brand, and how are we bringing that clothing brand into the game? And what is the color? If it's a shoe, is there a color iteration that we're going to exclusively drop in game and then make it available to the consumer? So there's a lot of fun things that we can do. It takes a lot to get there. Obviously, everyone has their personal initiatives, and prioritizing who we're doing with and who we're not, I think is one of the challenges. But it's honestly, I've kind of been saying this since I've been at 2K, is working on NBA 2K is an embarrassment of riches. You have so many things. We have so many things that we can pull off of to tell really incredible stories. And there's honestly not enough time to do it, and not enough people to do it. So I think it's really balancing and prioritizing what are those key messages for the upcoming game that's going to really connect with our core consumer.
I like this passing back and forth. It's a good stretch in the morning. Continuing on the topic of fashion and culture, I think it's really interesting. As I said, fan culture meets internet culture, meets gaming culture, meets NBA culture. Can you expand on a little bit more of your background working at Diesel, Ralph Lauren, et cetera, and how you take your approach to looking at fashion from courtside to then game side?
Hello. Oh, look
We're
at us.
back. Look at
Thank
that
you.
technology.
Yeah, fashion's the fun part, right? Like it's such a critical part of what is happening within basketball culture, from tunnel walks to, the Met Gala to what, who's wearing what in the press conference. I think you can go completely bananas with some of the crazy things we've seen in those tunnel walks to just really exciting new brands that are coming to market that we're able to leverage. So it's a combination of, existing league partners that we want to bring into the game, and we will, drop those collections within the game that the consumers can get within the city and all of that. But then it's also bringing those fashion messages in a new and different way. Something we've talked about, and I'm probably not to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We've talked about it since I've been at 2K for 3.5 years. Is like, wouldn't it be awesome if we could do a fashion show in the city, right? Like that's just something really cool that we've talked about. We haven't been able to do it yet because the logistics of that and getting those rights from any designer we'd want to work with, really challenging. But it's some of the exciting things that you can pull out to just keep the experience really fresh for our core audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you do that, definitely add me to your invite list. We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to open this up for a few minutes here before we continue to see if there are any NBA 2K questions or questions specifically for Dana or myself. I know there's some out there. Don't be shy. There we go, right in the front.
Question, you said the magic word fashion. So how is it in a traditional team-oriented business that you get new fashion brands in? Now, I know that the streetwear thing has been really adopted, made bigger and bigger by a lot of sports people. But there's another level in there that's not being addressed. And I wonder, how do those brands make that entree into what you're talking about? That was brilliant, frankly.
Yeah. So the question is essentially, how do brands start to evolve so they can be part of the conversation within NBA 2K, right? Yeah. So it's a challenge, and not so much a challenge, but it's two things are at play here. We have the logistics of partner rights, right? Like, as we all know, NBA, WNBA, they have existing partners that we work with regularly, and that is we are an extension of those leagues, and so therefore we work with those brands. And anything that is not an existing NBA or WNBA partner, we have the ability to do in-game collections. And so it's really just about who is hot and upcoming, and who are the athletes talking about, who is our community talking about, who's a brand that's just doing really cool things that we want to start to integrate into our game. And so it's just a matter of our team knowing what's going on in the fashion world and what's really at that intersection, and then pulling it into the game. It's not as simple as that, but generally speaking, that's the first step.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Does it go for somebody like you, or is it better to go to the individual members of the seats? Because I've seen, we had that happen too. We had some, not great about us, but we had some basketball players wearing the merchandise and it bubbles up. But yet I feel like there's something that needs to be done more at the level of what you're doing in order to create critical mass.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. So we have some existing team deals, and those teams we work closely with year over year. I think for us, it's working through 2K and really through the leagues, and coming to an agreement as to if we want to amplify or not.
Go ahead in the back. Yep.
Yeah, we're good. You're good. Oh, sorry, little echo. Dana, just because we're in this office, do you ever see a day where gaming and gambling come together?
I knew it was going to someone was going to ask that,
right?
and I can't answer that question. I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I think that's, given who our core consumer is, there's a ton of sensitivity around it. Is it happening anytime soon? Absolutely not.
I think we have one back here.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, just with FIFA losing the rights with EA, obviously they've been through that kind of breakup. Do you think that 2K would ever venture into the soccer market in terms of gaming?
Yeah, didn't see that one coming, but I'll happily answer it. Anything's possible, right? Like we, obviously NBA 2K is our biggest title within the 2K portfolio. We have a lot of other sports games. We have PGA, we have WWE, we have Topspin, which is tennis, which just launched a few weeks ago. So there's always an opportunity to continue to build specifically our sports portfolio.
Yes, and straight in the back.
When you guys make a digital copy of an athlete, do you own that digital copy or does the athlete own the digital copy?
As far as like the cover art,
No, the actual.
The
Like, so let's just say Caitlin Clark, whenever you capture her,
yeah,
that's now become a digital object, right? In the
Yep.
game that people can play with.
Yep.
Do you own that or does she own that?
we own that.
You own it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
In the front. Yeah.
I can repeat it.
In the introduction of Apple Vision Pro and other channels, can you talk to us a little bit about how you think where you're integrating marketing strategy across platform across devices?
Yeah. So the question was about cross-platform and cross-devices with the introduction of some new technology on the market. So specifically last year for 2K24 was the first time we rolled out crossplay, which essentially an Xbox user can play with a PlayStation user, which was something that the community has been asking us for years, and we were finally able to deliver. That will continue to evolve over the next few years as to integration across other different consoles. And it's definitely something we know the community wants because everyone's not on a PlayStation or everyone's not on an Xbox, right? And with all from Switch to even PC, there's a ton of opportunity for cross play.
If you're on the cover of Madden, it's a curse. If you're on the cover of 2K, it's not a curse. Booker got knocked out in the first round. I'm curious, does anyone fear that? Do you have that conversation? Is the gaming world talking about this at all?
I love that question. It's actually something we do talk about. So, you know, and in the sense of not so like if we decide to put a rookie on the cover, the risk associated with that, or even just signing a rookie. So rookies, sometimes they get injured, like Chet 2 years ago. You know, we had this massive marketing plan for Chet 2 years ago, and none of it came to life because he got injured in preseason. So there's always the risk. I think, you know, when we had Zion on the cover 4 years ago, like that could have been considered a curse. That's the only time it's happened to my knowledge, where it just completely flopped. But yeah, it is something we talk about. And honestly, when we have those meetings to talk about who's going to be on the cover for the upcoming year, it's some of the most passionate conversation you can possibly imagine. And it's funny to see people like completely shut down, like all objective perspectives go out the window, and it becomes, this is what I want and this is what I think. And it's just really funny to see how people get about stuff like that.
Hi, I grew up playing basketball, was a huge fan of like my mixtapes and things like that. I'm curious to know, how does 2K track up and coming talent, or is it something where you listen to what the players are talking about, or do you have your own listening methods?
Yeah, it's a great question. So music obviously is incredibly important to our game. The 2K soundtrack is something that people look forward to year after year. We have a team that is solely dedicated to music. Like that's all they do all day. And they not only for NBA, they do it for other games as well. But obviously NBA is the biggest driver, and they are working with all of the top labels. And it's not only, you know, the names that everyone knows about, but it's also those up and comers. And we really try to highlight some of those, put new people on the map through our 2K soundtrack. So it's an initiative we've had for a few years where we're highlighting new up and coming artists that, you know, we think people should know a little bit more about, and we get them integrated into the soundtrack.
Perfect.
Hi. The NBA is becoming more of a international game, right? Like I think the top 3 players for the
Yeah.
MVP are all international players. How's that kind of played into 2K and its marketing strategy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have key markets that we are doubling down on year after year. And so it's obviously some of the obvious ones like France, right? Because of the Wemby effect, which is a very real thing. And, you know, Australia is a massive market for us. So we see the trajectory of the sport at the purest form and what markets the sport is growing in, and then what the extension of that looks like for NBA specifically. So we think about it from that standpoint, which is really a sales-driven conversation. But then as far as who we're selecting from athletes or partners or apparel brands, that plays into it as well. So how are we really selecting athletes that will resonate in other countries? When we had Luca on the cover 3 years ago, 2K22, it was, you know, our success in Europe was pretty significant because of that. And so we definitely consider who the athlete is and how that's going to resonate in other countries outside of the US.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Oh, is somebody else?
Yeah.
Got the mic? You want to arm wrestle for this?
You go ahead, then
Just
I'll.
real quick, the intersection between physical play and digital play, there's a really cool company we follow called Hoop that does the smart backboard and allows to gamify, you know, the shoot around and things like that in the backyard and allow you to compete with others around the world. Do you guys look at that intersection and do you think about how you take kids from the console outside and back and forth and how that interplay works?
Yeah, we think about it. I think it's the challenge of what that connection point actually is and how you bring that to life. Like, we know that's all happening, and it's always an opportunity for, you know, more crossover. It's just a matter of where that's falling from a prioritization standpoint and how what we're doing with that information. So we started talking about it as far as next steps there to be continued.
Personally, I'm excited for the return of the NCAA football video game. Is college basketball something that you're looking at too? And just curious to kind of know what 2K's stance is there.
Yeah. So we right now don't have college basketball rights. It is something that we also talk about very often. And I think just the success, I'm going to bring it back to women for a minute, just the success of March Madness this past year with women specifically, like the opportunity there is tremendous. Because as the viewership of women's sports is not just women, right? And it's not just women playing in women's modes in NBA. And so really thinking about what that looks like on the go forward and how we continue to build new products to service all these audiences, as well as the trajectory of different iterations of basketball.
Great. Thank you for those engaging questions. I know we're out of time. One last question for Dana. Favorite team, favorite player, and favorite to win the NBA final.
And favorite what?
Favorite to win the NBA final.
Oh, well, my favorite team is the Knicks from a basketball standpoint. So it's been really fun. And honestly, I said to my husband last night, there's no one that's not rooting for the Knicks right now, unless you're a Pacers fan. They're the scrappiest, grittiest team I think we've seen in a really long time. So it's really fun. I don't have a favorite player. I love them all equally. Just kidding. I don't actually mean that. I love to see, for me specifically, like I just love to see these female athletes and the trajectory that they're on and just the stories they're able to tell and the engagement and just continuing to build on that. It's just so exciting to see as just a former female athlete. So I love that. And then my favorite to win the chip this year, I mean, I can't not say the Knicks, but we'll see what the Timberwolves do.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.